And good morning, you guys. Welcome back to Pro Publications YouTube channel. As always, it's me, Rich. Daily uploads to open up my own comic book shop. And today I want to talk about the next moves. So today I spent time going through a catalog for a wholesale distribution company that basically only dabbles and deals with books and graphic novels and mangas and things of that nature. So this would be like a wholesale distributor for like a Barnes and Nobles, things like that, right? And it is so fun to look through the catalog and to see shit that I personally want. Obviously the stuff that I'm gonna do, the purchase that I'm gonna make, is with the intent of reselling this stuff. You know, whether through a TikTok shop, through pop-ups, through our website, which is currently down because I'm reworking a few things. But that's the plan, right? That's the intent. But on the fun side, I'm also looking at books that I personally want, and books that I think would be fun to look at and review on the channel, right? Like, why not? And then beyond that, the idea is that, like, let's say I am unable to sell this stuff, right? Which, you know, could occur. If in that case, like, it's also like I'm curating the library that I hope to have in the coffee and comics shop, right? Because I want to have bookshelves of stuff people can pull out and just read. And so, like, that's kind of like the way I'm curating it. Not necessarily just whatever I think will sell, because there's a lot of junk comic books that I think will sell, but rather what are comic book titles that I find interesting and would personally like to read. So that way, if I don't sell it, I can even like absorb it into my personal collection. Also, like, what are comic books I think people should read, right? So like a clear distinction of that is like, I've looked for anything that was made by Jack Kirby, right? Any title that is specifically a Jack Kirby title. I don't care if it's Commandy, Eternals, like, I don't care, right, what it is, but Jack Kirby's work I think is something people should read. Looking for certain artists that I like a lot and seeing if I can't add that to the collection. Another one, Frank Miller is another one that I like a lot. So a lot of things that say Frank Miller on it is something that I'm curating into the collection, as far as like things that I would love to have in the library, things that I would love to have in my personal library, and then things that I think would be interesting to read. So in that same vein, like, I'm also looking at mixing up the different companies that are there. But for some reason, and I have to assume that this is just the deals that they make, but I always wondered why there was a lot of IDW books, like in Walmart and places like that. And it looks like IDW is really smart and they're everywhere with as far as distribution goes. So I've noticed that IDW has a lot of titles on the catalog. Boom Studios has a lot of titles on the catalog. Image. There was another comic book company that I'm not very familiar with, but they had quite a few titles. And then you had, you know, Marvel and DC and Dark Horse, which I think Dark Horse is fairly well known. But like I said, I didn't even go through half of the catalog. And, you know, definitely trying to do the homework and really figure it out, because, you know, I'm not gonna say it's a purchase that would like decimate me, for sure. That's not the case, because, you know, I gotta be smart and I gotta run a lean program. But rather, I definitely don't want to end up with hella boxes of comics I can't move. Like, that's not the plan either. So like, definitely trying to figure out that balance of like what will sell versus what I think people would like to read. And some of that's also going to be the value that I add, right, through the content that I make on TikTok or just YouTube, right? Like, communicating like what's interesting about this book, like who the artist is and why I wanted to have that on the shop, right? So like, one of the books that I'm getting is Jack Kirby, The Eternals, right? So his run on The Eternals, which for a lot of people, I don't even think they know that Jack Kirby created The Eternals. But like, you know, like why that matters, like in comic book history, and like who Jack Kirby is if they don't know who Jack Kirby is, and kind of like what his plan and thoughts were on The Eternals. And it was just like this pulpy sci-fi, right? There's another one that I saw that collected, I'm not sure what it was, but it was like a collection of different Marvel comics, which they say are like the must read for like Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and things of that nature. And that seems fun to me too, right? Because there's certain characters that I just don't know enough about. And going back to that thing with Jack Kirby, the reason why that really caught my eye is because Jack Kirby created Black Panther. And so I'm like, I definitely would want that in the collection. And if I'm not mistaken, they say that there's like a chapter or a forward or something that kind of talks about the history of the character. So that looked very interesting to me. There's other titles as well from other companies that I'm gonna keep rummaging through, but some of it sounds interesting to me as a person. I just don't know how much comic book readers want to get that information from comic books. So an example of that is like, there was one book called Getting Your Finances Together, the graphic novel, and I'm like, I don't know if people are gonna be buying comic books to get like financial literacy. Like, I don't know if that's a hard sell or if that would connect. And I think a lot of that's gonna depend upon like how they present it and how the comic book's done. But I don't know if my first outing I want to dabble in like trying that kind of shit out. Like that, this whole thing is like a new endeavor for me, and it's just getting me closer to having a comic book shop, which is the plan. A comic book like nerd cafe kind of shit, right? This is one step closer to that end goal, right? And I don't know if I want to overcomplicate it with trying titles that like I wouldn't even buy from the comic book shop, right? Like if I was looking for, you know, financial literacy books, I probably wouldn't get it from a comic book shop. And that's just me being real. Like I have to assume that my prime demographic or comic book like reader is someone like me that would read weird counterculture outsider art, right? So like that's what I have to lean into, because I have to assume that like I have to really love what Feral Publications is doing in order to really have that energy and communicate that out to the world. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But again, it's been hella fun to look through the catalog, and like I said, it's just getting shit that I personally want to read or shit that I would love to have in my collection, and that shit is fun. And like I'll get into like the nuts and bolts of it all, of like how much it costs and like what's the price point, all that shit, because that stuff I think is very interesting to know, because once you start seeing it all, I hate to say this, man, but like you start realizing like how much better priced a lot of this stuff could be, but that people honestly genuinely are overpricing a lot of shit. And that's my first assessment of it. But like I said, I have to see how much the shipping is going to be and everything else, because like how much of it gets damaged in transit to me, right? Like that's a real thing, right? I might open it up and like half of the books I can't even fucking sell them, and then what's that process look like of me trying to get either the money back or get books resent to me? Like it's gonna be a long learning curve, you know what I mean? But like I'm here for that, right? Like I enjoy that aspect of this all, like the haggling and the business aspect is fun to me. And on top of that, like I fucking like comics and I read comics, and like let me give you guys a prime example of the kind of shit that I buy, right? Like look at this shit. I bought this. Like I paid money for this shit. And like I think for most people they would be like, I'm not paying you for this shit. This doesn't even have a cover. It's all fucked up. And like don't get me wrong, like I didn't fucking pay some absurd amount, but this is an Archie comic from 1958. And like for people that know me, that you guys know, like I fuck with Archie. Like I find them very funny, and like I always like a lot of the stuff that I do, I kind of base it off like the slice of life shit from the Archie comics, of like just random funny shit, but like I obviously add like a punk you know, humor to it, and I obviously add like my political satire to it, and so then definitely, you know, add my flair to it. But like I love like the slice of life shit, right? Like even going back to like Maggie the Mechanic, or you know, Love and Rockets, and that whole series, like that shit is fun and fire to me. But definitely like I like the ones that get damaged, my idea is like that's gonna go into the collection, right? That's what I'm gonna absorb. And even if they're damaged, like and maybe not something that I can sell, it's still something I could probably read, I'm assuming. Like unless they're like completely fucking chewed up or shit, like at that point, like yeah, then like I gotta fight that, and I gotta try to get the money back or get the books resent or whatever the fuck. But that's what I did today, man, so far, and you know, it was fun, and I just wanted to talk about that and just communicate that's the next move, and like that's gonna be rolling out this week. And like if you guys are interested in that shit, like make sure you guys follow the channel and stay tuned, because I upload daily, and like this is gonna be probably some of the more larger aspects of it, of just like really just like I said, breaking it down, like what's the price point, like how did it arrive, what was the transit, what was the supply chain issues, like how am I gonna house it, like all that shit is gonna be just kind of the next thing that I tackle. And going back to that thing of like, it's pushing me closer to the end result that I'm looking for. So that's the plan. But alright guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and I do this shit daily, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Lates.